Good afternoon, and welcome to our continuing series, Interviews with Disciples and Devotees. Today, we are honored again to have Kittu with us. Namaste.
Thank you.
We're in chapter 9, I believe,
Yeah.
conclusion of chapter 9, but I would like to read this letter that was recently sent to
Do you know this man?
Kittu. No, I don't. No. My dear Mr. Reddy, you may not remember me. I attended one of your videotapings last month. Must have been here, during which the electricity failed, and you were obliged to continue on somewhat more informally. At one point, someone asked about how he might find a copy of your book, A Vision of United India. You very generously invited him and the others of us who were in attendance to go with you home to where you had copies of your books. We did, and I have a copy here on my desk, for which I want to thank you most kindly for your very generous gift. I am especially gratified to find generous quotations by our teacher, and generally to find his broad and uplifting spirit everywhere in evidence, as you describe the events and circumstances of divided India today. Interesting as those circumstances are, what has inspired me was the means by which unity can come about. And that is essentially through an integrated yoga which insists on spirit or divinity as the great commonality among all men and religions. Quite unexpectedly, a week or two before attending your talk, I participated in another, which had as its center the synthesis of yoga. A copy of this thin pamphlet was gifted to the few participants who were there. Its message you quoted liberally in A Vision. My few weeks' visit at Oroville was because of incidents like these two meetings has stamped my being with an assurance and confidence to proceed with urgings and callings so long heard and not fulfilled. Thank you again, dear sir. I am hoping to meet you again when next I visit Oroville and Pondicherry. Peace to you, Greg Marquez. Beautiful letter. Look at that line. Has stamped my being with an assurance and confidence to proceed with urgings and callings so long heard and not fulfilled. Beautiful.
So now we are going to the new chapter. It is the possibility of a world empire. Do you think that a world empire is possible?
It's already happened. The corporate world has created a world empire.
So on the corporate level. Any other level?
I don't know.
But certainly not on the political level and not on the administrative level.
At least visibly. It could be indirectly still happening. Because there are 12 families which rule the world, which make all the major decisions of the world, and they have a meeting somewhere in Europe or somewhere in Canada, and so they are kind of controlling.
A little louder.
Okay.
You'll have to speak louder.
Okay. I understand that there are 12 powerful families in the world which meet every 2 years. I forget their name.
Rothenberg.
No. Uh, I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly. But they meet and they make the world decisions, and it's like a council, and they invite the most influential people of the world, and they kind of hold their meetings in secret. And apparently they are guided by the dark forces. So, in some sense, we are being controlled.
No, my question is, how are they influencing? They can meet, they can decide. How are they influencing the governments of the world?
I haven't been to one of their meetings, so I'm not aware of those specifics.
So, in a sense, there is already a world empire.
That's the sense I do have.
No, because yesterday one of my students told me that there is a group called the Illuminati,
Oh, yes.
huh? And they are really manipulating the whole world movement. And I asked him how. He said that I can't say. But there is a group that is discussing the future of the world, and they are trying to influence in some way the important governments of the world.
I mean, for example, what they do is say for American presidents, they support a candidate from both Democratic Party and Republican Party, groom them, and so whoever wins the election still makes the decisions in favor of what this particular group decides. I think both Illuminati and this other group.
So all this is moving towards enormous centralization. And well, whether it is good or not, we'll see. All right. So now he is discussing the possibility of a world empire. Now the important thing is this: the progress of the imperial idea, which is today artificial, held by force, to the position of a realized psychological truth, where it will be a spontaneous addition, right? He says is only a possibility, not a certainty of the future. It is not even more than a vaguely nascent possibility, right? So he always is insisting that you have to create first the psychological binding, and when the psychological binding or how the psychological binding might come about is either by or combination of external and internal means. External because huge interdependence. Anything that happens in any part of the world has an effect on every part of the world, more or less. And secondly, each one of us is dependent on the events that take place all around the world. That is external. If to that is added a deeper psychological understanding of things, then it will hasten. And not only hasten, it will be secure. Do you think it is happening?
Actually, can you repeat that?
I said, do you think that this is happening?
Which is
External and internal bonding. External bonding is happening. We are so dependent on each other. But is the internal bonding taking place?
If I think about the marriages that happen and the children that come out of these international marriages, then the children carry both aspects within their DNA. So
That is a help. But is it coming on the political and administrative levels?
at least in the United States, I would say yes, because I see a lot of people, say from Indian origin, getting elected as senators, like Bobby Jindal, he's the Louisiana governor, and so people are getting elected. So at least Indians have seen entering the political scene at different levels, like the city council, the state government, and the federal government.
Yesterday I had a discussion with a friend. He said world empire will not come. I said, how will you handle China and Korea? They are somewhat threats today. He said by alliances. That means United States, India, Japan, possibly Indonesia and Philippines and the Pacific countries, they come together and exert huge amount of pressure on China and Korea. Korea is very small, but China is very, right? But world empire is ruled out.
How do you view the recent rapprochement with North Korea and South Korea?
It had to happen because of the Winter Olympics. And North Korea, if it boycotted South Korea, could not have taken part in that event, which they wanted to take part. Now again I'm coming back to the same thing. This is circumstances that have brought them together. Now circumstances, once the games are over, they might go back to their old positions. Or it might build a deeper understanding, right? Mm-hmm. And that, as far as I can see, China will not be quite thrilled about that. Because China wants to expand and it would like friends. And North Korea is one of the friends that is there today. But that is all in the future. You can never say.
United States is influencing China in a very interesting way.
A little louder.
Sorry. United States, they influence China in a very interesting way. The customs duty for Chinese goods is zero, just like African goods is zero. So that's why Chinese goods are available at much cheaper price. So I feel as if that gives Americans a way in China because of this trade policy. Like Indian products, we have to pay full customs duty. So softening in this economic way,
open the doors.
It opens and it influences. And when Nixon, he went to China, then
Kissinger. Kissinger.
Yeah, Kissinger, that team. So they had reporters who went there and somebody fell sick. So they were treated, they had treated with acupuncture. And the Americans were just completely surprised that without any, typical Western understanding of medicine, these people were cured. And so that opened, like there's a whole bunch of acupuncture and all Chinese medicine schools that are there in United States now. So this kind of influencing is happening.
Interchange, influence and all that.
Foods and at different level, yeah.
But it will not be a world empire. It will be a world union. It won't be an empire. Empire is always X dominating the rest. Here it will be interchange, interdependence, coming closer together, etc. Agreed? So he says that this imperial idea moving to the world empire is not even a remote possibility. So that can come about if either the old idea of a single world empire be converted into an accomplished fact, or if the opposite ideal of a free association of free nations overcome the 101 powerful obstacles which stand in the way of its practical realizations. So I believe that we are heading straight towards that world unity. Two, three reasons. One is, if there is lack of unity, if it goes beyond a point, it will lead to a war. And war today is disastrous for everybody. That is number one. Number two, the positive thing is globalization and digitalization. We are in contact with everything that is happening in the world. And then, as you said, next, intermarriage, close connection, dependence on each other, right? That will create probably by external means an internal unity. It will start on the economic, might be religious. Yes or no?
I agree, religious, because I think people from different religions are finding their commonalities.
Little louder.
People from different religions are finding what is common in between, like the core teachings are the same, which is going to that one divine being, either formless or either with form.
Which means also that shifting from religion to spirituality. Right. And then the whole thing will take on. So he says the idea of a world empire is in direct opposition to the condition that we have today in the world, and to the desirability also, because it will be always by force. So he sees that very little chance of it. But theoretically, let us admit the possibility that such a thing may happen. So, if one nation might succeed in overcoming all its rivals by force and diplomacy, and see the next part, and afterwards respecting the culture and separate internal life of its subject nations. Now, this is a very difficult thing. I conquer you, and yet I respect your individuality and your culture, right? Secure its way by the attraction of a world peace, because if there is a world empire, there will be world peace also, because it will be all under one control, no? But then this middle sentence part, respecting the national culture and the sentiments of the people whom they have conquered. If that happens, it might lead to an unparalleled organization of human knowledge and human resources for the amelioration of the present state of mankind. So, that is a rather difficult thing, because generally there is an attempt, even on the cultural level, to try to influence and dominate. And that, even if for some time you accept, sooner or later there will be a reaction. And this is exactly the problem that is there now in Africa. I was talking just before coming to this class, I had gone to meet the former governor of Pondicherry, General Lakera, and we were discussing Africa. 25 to 30 nations in that one continent. Many of them are very artificial. British Guyana, French Guyana, Dutch Guyana, because they were ruled by the British or the French or the Dutch. Many of them have not yet found their identity. And this gentleman who went with me to the governor, he says, he is now living in Sierra Leone. He is a student of the ashram. And he is so terribly backward. He is importing 400 Indians to Sierra Leone and giving them training in India, in Gujarat first. They must learn how to drive a car, they must learn how to swim, they must learn how to speak English, and they must learn to handle people, of very different type. So he has set up a training center in Gujarat. He's taking them over, and a small school of 400 students in a village. He has given huge amounts of money, developed it. There is tremendous response to India. China, they don't accept. West, they don't accept. But India, they accept. So it's a very positive feature. He says, all Gujaratis, but I said, why driving and why swimming? He says, my God, you can't imagine that place. If something happens to you, there is nobody to help you. So you might be somewhere where a car is available, you can take it. Otherwise, you have to swim across and go to some place, right? And you must know English, otherwise you can't manage. So now, as I told him, if Africa, with its huge and vast natural resources, wakes up, it will be one of the most powerful influences in the world. And it is very fortunate that these Gujarati Indians who are going there have not the slightest intention of domination. And this is what they are afraid of, both of the West and of China. So having gone there now, he was here, I think you might be knowing him, his name is Dayu, Vishwabandhu's nephew. You know Vishwabandhu, who passed away?
I think I know.
Yes, his nephew.
Nephew.
He has gone to Sierra Leone. And he has taken this 400 Gujaratis, he has taken them more and more. And they are most welcome. Much more welcome than the Americans and the Chinese.
But previously, Indians were thrown out of so many areas.
What?
Indians were thrown out of so many areas in Africa previously.
No, but in his place,
in
it
his
is working.
place. Okay.
Right?
Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone. And Indians have been thrown out in certain parts of the country, partly due to Western influence. Because if you listen to the BBC, it's a tirade against Indians going into Africa. Because they would like to have the domination of that continent, because the natural resources are enormous. That is one reason. And secondly, there we have to take the blame that sometimes the business is ruthless. And then naturally, but if you have the attitude of this boy who was brought up here, he was our student, he was my student, and he has taken this attitude that we should help them and not try to take anything out of them, then it has a positive effect. So he is training those people in India to take that attitude and then taking them over to Sierra Leone. If it succeeds in one place, then you can go on in other places. Right? So ultimately what he is saying is that all the conditions are against the realization of such a colossal dream. It can only come about by the immense changes as yet hidden in the secrecy of the future. And these immense changes are all internal. External changes will not help. But as my nephew said, alliances might help. Alliances are not permanent. Alliances are there for a certain purpose. And if that works, good. Otherwise, so then he is saying And this is that it is generally believed that Germany had such an desire of having a world empire. Sri Aurobindo doubts that. He says, how far there was any such conscious intention in a directing mind is a question open to doubt. But it is certain that if she had won the war, First World War, the situation created would inevitably have led her to this greater endeavor. Because the German temperament being what it is. Imagine Germany had won the First World War. Whole of Europe would be under her control. India would be under her control. Australia would be under her control. Canada would be under her control. Many of the countries of the Far East would be under her control. German temperament being what it was, they would try to create a world empire. Because of two reasons. I'm not speaking of Hitler, but of the earlier reason. Germany was born in 1865. In half a century, it became the leading nation of Europe. Technologically, philosophically, musically, artistically, literally. In 50 years, if someone can become so powerful, that is one. That gives them naturally a tremendous boost of their ego. And the second one was that already the theory had started that we are the Aryan race. We are the pure Aryan race, the Germans. And the pure Aryan race must dominate the world. Now, if they had won, surely they would have tried to dominate the world. So that's what Sri Aurobindo is saying. For she would have enjoyed a dominant position which no other country in the world had had. Because of her, he says, which I have recently governed, the idea of her mission. Now this idea of a mission, is it safe or dangerous?
It's like ego, right? Ego was the helper.
I mean, normally, if you feel that you have a mission, is it safe or dangerous?
I think it can be both. Initially it is safe, but then it can prove very dangerous.
I think it is right from the beginning dangerous.
Yeah.
Mission means I am superior, you are inferior. Right? And then you try to convert. Otherwise, conversion will not take place unless you have a mission. So that is one thing. And secondly, is Aryan race. That is again an extremely dangerous thing. And that is why from where the Aryan race came, God knows. Some say from the North Pole, some say from Europe, some say from here, some say from there. It's very difficult to trace back the history of this race. But if that sense of superiority comes in, then there will be a very serious problem. And unfortunately, and quite naturally also I would say, the British tried to play these cards. They created what is known as the Aryan race and the Dravidian race. We South Indians are Dravidian, North Indians are Aryans. When Sri Aurobindo came to Pondicherry, he said that I began to look closely at all the people around me, and I found that these Tamil Brahmins, fair, tall, absolutely nothing Dravidian in them. Most of my colleagues, local colleagues, they were exactly like the Bengalis. So I said, this is not an Aryan race and a Dravidian race. There is an Aryan culture and a Dravidian culture, which is united again, you see. And that, if you have any love of Indian music, North Indian classical music. South Indian classical music is very different. But today Bal Murali Krishna and Ravi Shankar are singing, playing together. Bal Murali Krishna and Ajay Chakravarti are playing together, right? Because there is a common thread. So, culturally different. And that is natural when there is not too much movement. And the Vinyas were separating North India from South India. South India developed its own culture, but not race. So this is a very important thing, because race can be a dividing factor.
What about present day religion? Islam in
Again,
many areas,
exactly as she pointed out,
Christianity.
it can be a uniting factor. It can be also a dividing factor. I have told this many times. If you believe that my religion is the greatest religion, and if you believe that there is one God and only one God, one book and only one book, one prophet and only one prophet, extremely dangerous. If you believe, like the Hindus believe, that every God is true, is real, is there, and as Sri Aurobindo says in the foundations, even Christ and Allah can be put into the Hindu pantheon. It is so wide. Now, if that attitude is taken, then from that wideness you move on to spirituality, there is no problem. But my God is the only God, and that is why very intense Christians are fanatics. But if you do like in the Indian army, every one officer and soldier, he is at the same time a Sikh, a Gurkha, a Hindu, a Muslim, Christian. He celebrates all festivals. It is compulsory, and they do it with a lot of enthusiasm. Then automatically you become wider, right? Now, either that has to be done or Hindu religion has to spread. And Uttar Para speech, Sri Aurobindo says categorically that a true religion is a universal religion. And the only true religion, only universal religion is Hinduism. Christianity need not be. Christians might be. Individual Christians can be very wide. But Christianity, which says one God, one book, one prophet, Islam, which says one God, one book, one prophet, automatically it becomes narrow. So, in one of his writings, small writings, he says you have to change the Muslim mind completely. They have to realize that we respect your God, but you must have the same feeling towards every others, no? And I think on the whole, you will be able to say, well, do you feel that in India more or less Muslims are moderate? More or less.
Yes.
Because we have got a huge number. 13% of our population is Muslim. 170 million. You don't see riots all over the place. And ISIS, only 6 people have been caught for joining that group, which is violent, right? So ultimately, a religion, if you don't like to use the word Hindu, which accepts every point of view, including atheism and agnosticism, will have to control the world. And that will automatically lead you to spirituality. All right? So, there are wonderful Christians individually. But those who believe one God, one Bible, one book, etc., and very intensely believe, dangerous. And that is why it's a very important lesson for all of us. Do not ever try to convert anybody to Sri Aurobindo. They must come to Sri Aurobindo. We must not give them Sri Aurobindo. If they are interested, then you can refer to them. If they show a desire and a keenness, then you can lead him to them. And that is happening today in a big way because of the internet. See, this is, and I remember there was a gentleman who was speaking in the Wednesday class and telling mother that we should now tell everybody about Sri Aurobindo. Her mother stood up almost. What? You are a propagandist? No propaganda whatsoever. If people are interested, okay. You see, last time, or the time before that, I showed you a letter of the mother on Pakistan. Luba photographed it. She has put it on the Facebook with the English translation. My God, formidable reactions. And 99% are very positive. 1% says, oh my God, another 170 million Muslims in India? No, a little more than that. It will be a disaster. We are having enough problem with these. So I said, look, someday or the other, we have to solve this problem. Correct? And so, let us start widening ourselves and educating everybody into a deeper understanding. Because ultimately, true education will help, but not the education that is being given today. It's more a disaster than a help, right? So that is the second thing. So anyway, he explains here in this paragraph that Germany did have this drive, as I said, the idea of her mission, her race superiority, the immeasurable excellence of her culture, her science, her organization of life, and her divine right to lead the earth and to impose on it. See, now this divine right is very egoistic. You and I are egoistic. Which is more dangerous, divine egoism or ordinary egoism? We are all egoistic.
Would it be that up to a point it would be a help and after that it would be a disaster?
Divine egoism,
Yeah.
I think from the minute you start, it's a disaster.
Like mission.
Now, because ego by itself is falsehood.
Yeah, but Sri Aurobindo writes in aphorisms that ego was the helper. It was the
That is
and
an
ego is the
individual
one.
life, right?
Uh,
But an ego which tries to help you to progress, which gives you a drive, right? And one of the biggest contributions of ego is honor. When you have an ego, which is of the right type, then you will find that it is below your honor to behave in this following way. Those who have no honor, they have a very perverse ego. They can use the worst language, they can behave in the worst possible fashion. You are coming from a decent family. I have my pride, I have my ego, I have my honor. So that ego is very desirable. And their ego is the helper. But the moment a large collective life and moving up to spirituality, this ego can become very narrow. If the Indian Prime Minister says India is the only country in the world, it will be a disaster, no? But he must be proud of India. He must know that it has a great culture, but not only culture, and a superior culture. Right? Let people come and say that you are superior. Some problem.
yeah. I'm trying to understand, but go ahead. I'm just trying to understand trying to comprehend what you just said.
No, you see, let us take all human beings. Very few people can say that we have gone beyond ego. But ultimate aim of spirituality is to go beyond ego. Agreed. In the meanwhile, there are two types of ego. One is a narrow, aggressive ego, and another is an ego which helps you to progress, move forward. And in that context, I said ego is honor. You see, I'll give you an example which I have experienced. Every soldier, he is a human being, he has been trained. Is he afraid of death or not?
He is.
He is afraid of death. Can he show that he is afraid of death? Now he says, I am an honorable soldier. I can never allow anybody to see that I am fear. And as our great military leader Manekshaw said, if somebody says that I have no fear, then he is either a liar or a Gurkha. And a humorous way of saying that and it is the fact, the Gurkhas have no fear. Tell them to do a job, they'll do it. They don't think. But I think. I have my family. I have my friends. I have so much left, So ego is a help at that time. But in collective life, in large collective life, the head of the institution, the head of a country, if he is very egoistic, then it is a very big obstacle. So I am making a distinction between the two egos. And in the book on education, in the last one, the psychic and spiritual discipline, right? Mother says if you go beyond the ego into the, right, you are out of this manifestation. Within 20 days, you will be out of this manifestation. As long as you are in this manifestation, in this body, in this world, a trace of ego has to be there. But not egoism. So again, you have to make a difference between ego and egoism. Egoism is all self-centered. Ego is something that makes you a distinct personality. And this I can tell you from my own experience. You have to develop this ego. Because, look carefully, your thoughts, are they your thoughts or are they coming from outside?
Mostly outside.
Then it is not your thoughts. If you have ego, nothing that is not yours will not come in. Right? Feelings. Again from outside. So when you say that I am going to surrender to Mother, what are you going to surrender? If nothing is yours, now if you have formed your ego, a distinct individuality, then you are in a position to say, Mother, this is yours. But now you can hardly give anything because there is so much other things that are entering for the normal human being.
We didn't touch on spiritual ego.
That is much more dangerous.
Much more dangerous.
Because you have attained some experience and then you feel that you are on a much higher level. Extremely dangerous. So ego and egoism.
It's my understanding that it's my understanding that Sri Aurobindo talked about religion, the concept of religion and the concept of nation.
Concept of?
Nation. As that's what divides the human race the most.
He talks of nation and
Religion both.
as dividing forces.
I read it specifically, but this is just an impression I have gotten.
It is not
Is
true.
that it's not true?
You see, he is very clear, absolutely, that the nation must exist. Even when the world unity will come about, the nation with its own culture, individuality and all that must continue to exist. Absolutely clear about that. But that a nation can be egoistic, absolutely possible. I can be egoistic, I need not be egoistic. That a nation can be egoistic, undoubtedly. You see, because very often ego and identity go together. And if you have a distinct identity, do you have an ego with that? Or nothing? Or are you a fluid, nebulous mass?
There is that ego.
So there is an ego. But it is not a bad ego. It's a very good ego.
Healthy ego, healthy.
Very healthy. But when you try to impose your ego on others, when you try to dominate others, then it becomes a barrier.